Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is LaToria, and we are here for another episode of Soul Care Sessions. I got my girl Abdi with me. Say hey,
Hey everyone.
Abdi. And so the topic of discussion for today is going to be identity and self-love for the month of April. And we're just going to chop it up. We're going to explore some realities and talk about all the things. But before we do that, Abdi, for those who are new to this conversation or to this series, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So excited to do this again. Like I say, this is my jam. So I love being able to just sit and just chat and talk about all the things. So like LaToria said, my name is Abdi Zelaya. I am an LPC associate, a licensed professional counselor associate, supervised by Tiffany Ashenfelter. I am Latina. I am a therapist, a trauma therapist, EMDR trained, pursuing certification in Christian sex therapy. So yes, all the things. And I'm excited that I'm here and we get to talk about this topic specifically.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us and for lending us your expertise, ma'am.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I'm so glad that we were able to connect. I think just kind of diving in with the concept of identity. I know that a lot of times people, even myself, especially, in my high school age, early 20s, that age range, I really had a hard time finding or putting a, like, being able to pin down my actual identity, right? I think a lot of times people find their identity in their job or the sport that they play, or in, being the good girl, or, like being the play mama, or, whatever thing that they do that they're really good at, or being the pretty girl, the one whose face is always beat and her hair is always together and her body's always popping, like. But none of those things really equate to identity. Like, what are your thoughts just with, in general, having a sense of actual identity?
Yeah. When I think of identity, it's who you are, not necessarily what you do or what you look like. It's who you are, who you were created to be. I think it's really important, and kind of even going back to like teenage years, it's an awkward stage where you're trying to figure out, like, who am I? Right. Like, what am I even doing with life? I'm just trying to survive and get through high school and all the things and friends and all of this. And I think it's such a crucial time to, I don't know if I want to say explore, but to experience or to just find out what is your identity, because it I think it will affect everything else moving forward. Kind of like what you were talking about, people that identify with their sport that they play or the way that they look, and they hold on to that. And what happens when in the future that changes? Then, that foundation wasn't secure and strong enough to hold that identity, and now they're grasping, like, who am I?
Yes.
And I think as believers, we can put our trust and build our identity in who God says that we are. And He created us for good. He created us to do good things, and we are good. We are His creation. We are His kids. Just kind of standing on that knowledge of, hey, I'm God's kid. My identity is in Him. He says that I'm good. So that's what I think of identity.
If you guys were looking for the answer, she just gave it. Where is my identity? It's found in Christ. It's in God, it's in who God says you are. Not what society tries to tell you. Maybe even sometimes your culture can try to tell you, like, who you are, what you should be. Like, no. At the end of the day, you're God's child.
Yeah.
And that is the core of where everything else should spring from. I totally identify with what you're talking about, though, Abdi, because I remember, like, high school, I was really good, like, pursuing the WNBA. Everything for me was like basketball first, everything else second, including Jesus, unfortunately. And when that was ripped away from me, I totally had an identity crisis, you know, like in my 20s, where I was like, who am I without this basketball in my hand? Like, who am I if I'm not training all the time? And like everything that I was doing was so that I could succeed at this one thing. And it was like, okay, that's gone. So who are you? And I wrestled with that for a couple of years, to be honest. So don't be like me.
I think we've all gone through that. I think I might have shared it, I think the last time, where, you know, about my own therapist saying like, well, if you were to remove like the sacrificing yourself for others and all these additional like things that you're involved with, who is Abdi? And I was like, I don't know. Like, oh goodness, who am I? And it's so true. I wasn't putting my foundation was not based on like my identity in God, but what I was on the actions or in the things that I was involved, and even like the things that I was involved in church, which is not, you know, like, yes, it's you know, faith and I'm participating in church, but my identity was not on who God was saying that or who God says I am. It was on what I was doing. So yeah, we've all been through that.
Yeah, it's tricky. It can be, you know, a slippery slope if you're not cognizant and conscious of really anchoring yourself in the reality that if I put all this stuff down, if I am not able to function at all, I can't talk, I can't speak, I can't do anything, who am I? Like, that's where our anchor has to be, you know, kind of grounded in. And I think, you know, what's crazy, I don't know if you felt this way, but like there was something freeing about saying, I don't know. I don't know. Like the more I started to realize, like, I don't know who I am. Like it was almost like this reset button where I had the opportunity to find out, you know, and to really establish life with an understanding of my actual identity, and not the one, this false one that I had been pursuing, that was centering basketball and not centering God. But yeah, I feel like it can be a freeing experience. It can be kind of scary because you're like, whoa, what the heck? And what do I do with this unknown reality? But if you think about it from the perspective of humbling yourself and kind of like cleaning the slate of all the stuff that you put on your life and just being like, okay, we'll start over. I'm God's child. Now what? And just thinking about your purpose flows from your identity and understanding that you're God's child. So if I'm God's child and his word says that he has works for me to do, what are those works? And you start to build little building blocks based on that, so that your why that you do the things that you do starts to be anchored in your identity and not the other way around. Right. I mean, and even in that, you know, we're talking to women. So even if you take that a step deeper and just think about like all the different ways that society kind of subconsciously pressures us with how we appear and, you know, body image and all of those things, like you can surrender what society has told you you're supposed to be and pick up who God says you are. And it can create, if you do the work, it can create a whole new realm of like self-understanding and self-love, right? So like, tell me what your thoughts are on that as far as self-love and just understanding and loving oneself.
So I do want to share something I found online, and I was all like, I like this, and I can like just kind of go from there. So there was this one thing I looked up, and it kind of defines what self-love, and says self-love is a state of appreciation for oneself that grows from actions that support our physical, psychological, and spiritual growth. Self-love means having a high regard for your own well-being and happiness. Self-love means taking care of your own needs and not sacrificing your well-being to please others. Self-love means not settling for less than you deserve. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good.
Wow.
Because when we tie it to like being a child of God and knowing that I have a responsibility and a job for myself, what does that mean? That means that I have to take care of myself physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all of these things. in knowing my worth and loving that I am a daughter of the Most High God. It means taking care of my own needs and not sacrificing to please others, because that's not my job.
Right.
My job is to please my Father, not, my friends or my partner or whoever.
Right.
And it also means not settling for less than you deserve. So when we put our worth and in who God says that we are, like a queen or, a queen or a princess is not going to just do any like lower, I know this sounds weird, like just like lower end type of job. They're going to be like, no, I'm supposed to be served because I'm a princess, I'm a queen. So when we kind of take that identity, like I'm a daughter of God, so I'm not going to settle for anything less than what he says that I deserve. And he says that I deserve, great things. So
wow.
That's what I think of self-love.
That's so good. That's so well like captured, especially that quote, man. Like you have to tell us where you found that, or if you posted, send me the link and I'll definitely put it down below in the description box of this video, because that was well said indeed. Like I wonder sometimes, like, with just the concept of self-love, especially after going through my own therapy sessions and just really asking myself those hard questions, like, do you love yourself? Stop, look at yourself in the mirror. LaToria, do you love yourself? Or are you like, what are the evidences of that? What intentional actions are you taking? Like, do you examine yourself? Do you explore your thoughts? If someone said, like, tell me about you and your personality and your quirks and the the positives and the negatives, like, do you understand those things? And in the quote that you literally just said, it was a thought in my mind earlier, like to appreciate the great things about me or about oneself, and the flaws, knowing that both, God sees and he loves all of it. God does not just love the good parts of you and the shiny parts of you and the parts of you that you can post on social media. He loves all of who you are. Now, does he want you to wallow, in sin and toxic behavior and not be your best self? Of course not. But it doesn't take away from how much he loves you. Like, he loves all of you. And so then I have to ask myself that question: do I love all of me? Do I understand those flaws that I have? Why do I have those flaws? Where do they come from? How do I redeem them? Like, just doing the self-work to really, for real, love myself. Because I feel, and we'll save relationships for another day, but I just feel like you can't really fully experience all that there is to have in a relationship with somebody else if you haven't, to a certain degree, fully explored and understand yourself, right? I don't know, just some thoughts, but like, so what are some ways that you feel like maybe even society wise or culture wise we can find ourselves, or that works against us loving ourselves as we are?
And I even think that this ties to, kind of like that question that you asked yourself of, do I love myself? And standing in the mirror, and many times, especially as like women, we look at the physical parts, the physical aspects of like, oh, I don't like this about my body or how I look, and maybe I don't like that I do this or I speak this way or this and that. And I think we might have even said this the last time we talked, and it was that question of who told you that was wrong? Where are you getting that is a flaw or that's something bad? Because if it doesn't come from the Bible and what God says that you are, then, if it's society, if it's your culture. And I think, culture sometimes create these norms or these expectations that sometimes work against us to love ourselves. I think of, those social expectations of what I'm supposed to look like, how I'm supposed to act, what type of job am I supposed to have? Some influences too. within your family, within your community, and friendships, and at church, and all of these things, those influences, and are they getting in the way of loving myself because I'm expected to do something? And I think, and even with that first quote that I had shared, putting others before you, I think culturally speaking, I think of like, as a Latina, as a woman, there's this expectation of like, I have to be kind and warm and motherly and nurturing, and just kind of love on everyone and put everyone's needs before me. And if I do that, it's great. But if I do that to the point where I'm exhausted and it takes away from me caring for myself as a human being, that's not loving myself.
Wow.
That is allowing these cultural expectations to kind of lead this behavior. And in the end, I'm suffering mentally, emotionally, physically, all these things. And that's not being kind to yourself. That's not loving yourself. If you truly love yourself, you are going to be like, hey, I'm important. I'm going to have to say no to this, you know, or I'm going to say, put that boundary of, it's not an absolute no of, you know, to do this, but we're going to do it differently because I have to take care of me. I have to check in with myself. And I think, I know this sounds selfish, but checking in with yourself and putting yourself first sometimes is a way to love yourself. If you are burning out and killing yourself to please others, to kind of put on this face and this, you know, platform of, oh, I'm great, everything is great, but on the inside you're like suffering and dying and all of these things because you're not taking care of yourself in all these different areas. That's not being kind. That's not loving yourself. I kind of went off on another.
No, keep going. It's all good.
And I think even with culture, understanding that sometimes being different is okay, and you can love that about you. Being bicultural or multicultural, sometimes society says, oh, that's weird, that's different, ew. And instead we could be like, hey, I'm different, and I'm gonna hold on to that. I'm gonna love that about me.
You know, something that I feel like God, a tool, if you will, that I feel like God has given me is when people project their negativity, just to ask the question, why? So, okay, I'm bicultural. I can speak 2 different languages. And you said, ew. Why ew? And just give that right back to them and just sit there and let them sit in the negativity that they just projected at you. Because a lot of times it's either rooted in their own insecurity or them believing some lie that society has told them about you and your culture. But when you really stop and think, like just grabbing that example that you just gave, like, for what reason would you say ew? Because someone is, you know, or make fun of who they are just because they're different from how you from who you are. If you even know who you are, you know what I mean? Like that's the tool that he gave me. Is like, just give it right back to them and ask the question, why?
That's good.
Because I think it takes all of the power out of what they were trying to do by othering you or making you feel like you're insignificant. You know what I'm saying? Or making you feel like you're not as valuable, or not, that you don't have as much value, that you're not as equally valued. I'm not gonna go on a tangent today. I'm gonna do it. No, but so okay, so we were talking about this clip on Instagram, right? So for you guys, just you know, off camera, there was I was scrolling on Instagram and I came across this clip of this show. I don't know the show. I'm not familiar with it, but it kind of seemed a little bit like a reality show. I don't know. I don't even know any of the names, but it was all in Spanish. Apparently it was on an American network though, because they said that in the clip. But anyway, there was this judge talking to this young lady, and the young lady was speaking in English to the judge. Everybody else in the room was speaking in Spanish, and she was speaking in English and saying that she was more comfortable speaking in English than she was in Spanish. So this is an example of what Abdi has been talking about, which I'm sure many of you watching this can completely identify with, you know, having 2 different cultures, being bicultural. And so the young lady was talking about being more comfortable speaking in English than in Spanish. And this lady judge, she just like completely attacks her and just like goes off, and basically was scrutinizing her and threatening her and basically bullying her, saying that, you might as well leave. If you're not going to speak in Spanish, then don't speak at all. Spanish is the only language that we speak here. Like, and she just went in on this poor child. Like, she had to have been like teenage, early 20s. So maybe not a child, but like she was definitely just, a young lady who was seemingly distraught. So I say all of that to say, like, can you speak to maybe just the challenges that can come when you are maybe your first gen, maybe your first or second generation, and or even not, and just you have a very rich culture, of speaking Spanish at home, and maybe English is a second language for a majority of your people in your family, or a good portion, and just even some of the struggles that can come from the absolute importance of preserving your culture and even finding a part of your identity in your culture and wanting to keep that, but also living in America, and where English is the first language, and if you're not taught that all the way, or because you're speaking English everywhere, but at home maybe you're more comfortable, like, just how would someone that's in the position like of this young lady on this clip, how would she go about discovering self-love in that predicament?
Yeah. Well,
It's
kind of going back
layered,
to
right?
Yeah, I was like, okay, let me pull this apart. So with that clip, I will say something, and I don't know if you caught this, but I think when she was saying like, no, I feel more comfortable speaking in English, and I think she was a teenager. She looked pretty young to me. So I'm only thinking like, oh my goodness, this poor baby, this poor child, and all the trauma that's going to come from the way that she was, talked down to.
Yeah.
But
on national TV, nonetheless.
Yes. And I was like, I don't care if it was for ratings. That's still, even if you planned it, but that's still very hurtful. I was right there, like ready to defend her and be like, that's not fair. But the judge, she said something about, because I think the young girl was saying, well, we're in the United States or we're in America or something. And the judge said, you're I don't know if it was like,
was she Cuban or it was maybe Cuban or Colombia, one of the two.
So she was like, no, you're Colombian. So she's telling her who she is. And the girl, and I can't remember if she said, no, I'm American, or I'm also this, I can't remember. But she was like, no, you're not, you're this. So almost invalidating her experience and saying like, no, forget what you think, this is who you are. And I think as, like first, second generation, or all these other added layers of, being multicultural, bicultural, it's okay to be Colombian and American. And it's okay to prefer to speak English and try hard to, and want to accept your Spanish, speaking abilities. I think it's very discouraging when you hear, and I even see this like within the Hispanic, the Latino community, of almost making fun of others that are different. Like when, growing up, I would have friends that would speak mostly English, and when they would speak in Spanish, you kind of get stuck, or you would say the wrong words and be like, "Ha, you're bocho," or "you're bocha," like you can't really even speak the language right. And I'm like, that's hurtful. So what you're communicating to that person is, that part of you is not good. So don't, you're not going to have any desire or want to accept it, and want to increase and grow that part of you. So a lot of times with my clients that are bicultural, multicultural, first, second, third generation, and they're struggling with, where do I fit in? I want to be able to celebrate this side of me, but I also have this other side of me. And I think the only person that can really decide on what that looks like is you. You can make that choice of, I identify as an American, and I also identify as Hondureña. because that's who I am. I will say my Spanish has gotten a little rusty because I don't practice it as much, but that doesn't make me less of a Latina or less of a person because, you know, I'm not as strong in this. I went off, but with this,
you didn't go off.
example,
You're right on.
With this girl, with this young lady, I think the way that it was approached and it was communicated was not helpful. Yeah. I understand the frustration of the judge of saying, like, don't lose that side of you. Like, you're Colombian. These are your roots. This is who you are. I think if it was communicated of, okay, I see that's a struggle for you. Yeah. So let's celebrate the fact that you're able to do that, even if it's not comfortable or it's not in the way that you would like it to be, but that's still part of who you are. And let's put it all into the bowl and let's mix it up and let's just, you know, take it all in because that's who you are. You have all these different parts of you.
Man.
Yeah.
That's so good. Like low key, I was just sitting here thinking, first of all, that young lady held her own pretty well. Like, her Spanish was really not that bad. I mean, I'm not the best judge, but she sounded pretty fluent. You know, she didn't sound like an American speaking Spanish for the most part. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think the pressure is what pulled that out of her. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so what I mean, even in that environment where you're talking about, like in family gatherings, if there's, you know, a cousin or relative who is more comfortable speaking English, but because of the environment that they're in, they try and then they get made fun of. Imagine how much more that person would flourish in speaking Spanish if you gave them love instead of criticism. And if you gave them encouragement instead of hardness, instead of speaking harshly to them, which makes it begs the question, why is that happening? I mean, we can't talk about it today, but it's something that I'm really kind of fascinated by. Like, why is that such a norm? Because it's not just in Latin culture, that happens a lot in Black culture too, but why is it the norm to criticize someone and expect out of that criticism that they're going to be better at the thing that you're criticizing them about, versus loving and encouraging that person to do better, and you know, and expecting them to flourish from positivity instead of negativity. You know, I don't know. It's food for thought. It's food for thought. But man, that's really good what you said about just embracing all of who you are and making the choice for yourself. With you know, how you will present, right? How you will show up in this world. And I think at the end of the day, understanding yourself, you understand that maybe if you know, just because you are of Latin descent, maybe you have not been in an environment that has cultivated the reality for you to be very fluent in Spanish. And if you know that that's your reality, it does not take away from you. Just like Abdi said, it does not take away from you. And I just encourage you, like I was saying earlier, any negativity that you get, give it right back. Do you think that you speaking negatively to me is going to make me want to be just the most amazing Spanish speaker in the world? And give it right back. Like, we don't have to receive negativity just because someone is spewing it at us or shooting at us, or, you know, trying to project it. Like, we don't have to receive it. Just block that, let it bounce, right, give it right back to them. That's my encouragement, you know, especially for you young ladies, but really for all of us as we're on this journey to really understand our God-given identity. Like, here's the reality. It could be part of God's plan for you to be in a situation where there are certain elements of whatever culture that you are strong and tapped into and locked and loaded and you're killing it. And then there are other areas in that same culture where you're weak or you're not as, you know, fluent in whatever element of the culture, but that could be God's doing. Could it be that maybe there's someone else that needs to be encouraged by you figuring out how to love yourself right where God has you, so that they can see what that looks like? Quite possible. I mean, look at my girl Abdi. She's kind of walking that thing out. I'm just saying. And really, all of us are to a certain degree. Once you really, going back to the beginning, once you really anchor yourself in the fact that first and foremost, I'm God's child. So another created thing cannot dictate to me my value, my dignity, or even my identity, because another person is created just like you're created. You have to look to the creator to really understand where your identity comes from.
Yeah.
So I won't go on a rant. I'll just ask Abdi, do you know of any resources or blogs, or have any kind of closing thoughts just around this topic of identity and self-love?
You know, I would even encourage, like, if that's something that you want to, when it comes to culture and how you want it to play a part of your identity, I think doing some research and connecting with other individuals that might be of your same culture and learning. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with saying like, hey, you know, I'm Latina, but I want to know more about my culture. There's quite a few podcasts, and I'm gonna have to send them to you. I can't remember at the top of my head. When it talks about there are these podcasts that they're talking about being in a Latino culture and what that looks like for everyone and how different it is.
Wow.
And it's so exciting to like listen to that. They're like, oh, I never thought about that this way. Oh, I'm really glad that I get to experience this and listen, you know, someone else's perspective. So, you know, do your research, listen to different podcasts, even different cultures, if that's part of what you want to bring in. Yeah, that's what comes to mind, you know, just there's nothing wrong with you doing some research and wanting to learn more about who you are.
Absolutely.
So do it.
And nobody has it all figured out. You know, like just like the example that we gave of this judge who she was unnecessarily harsh to this young lady. She ain't got it all figured out either. There's something in her life that she needs to go work out and iron out too. So like, don't let people bully you. I think is sitting really heavy on my chest right now, because it's just like, don't let people bully you. Like, we're all trying to figure it out. None of us are perfect. None of us have it all together. We're for life. That's why it's called the sanctification process. For our entire lives, the point is for us to look more and more like Jesus and his character and his person. And even to our dying day, we're still not going to get it perfect. He still has to come back and make things all new. So like, don't fall into this mental trap of feeling like you have to be perfect, because it's literally not possible. And anybody that's projecting that on you got a whole bunch of stuff that in their closet that they hide and that they have not worked through. So don't believe the hype or the lie for just one moment. Set yourself free to just own yourself and do the work to understand and love yourself.
Yeah, that's good.
Selah. So on that note, we're going to wrap up this conversation. Abdi, how can one get in touch with you? Where can we find you on social media? If somebody wants to link up and, you know, try out this counseling thing, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me, if you're interested in counseling, you can reach me at aspenhouseassociates.com and just put an inquiry, do free phone consultations, and just kind of start the process with that. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Therapy by Abdi. That is my Instagram handle. I always have to think, and I'm like, you know, make sure I'm giving out the right information. So you can follow me, just say hi, all the things. If you listened, you know, post it and tag us. I would love to be able to connect with you. And yeah.
Absolutely. So just as a reminder, guys, these conversations are brought to you by FCA. I'm actually here in the South Dallas sector to serve you. So if there's thoughts, prayer requests, topics that you want to hear us talk about, questions that you have, things that frustrate you and piss you off, something that you're going through right now, whatever, email me, hit me up, holla at me. That's what I'm here for. So you can find me, latoriawilson at fca.org. All of the links to all the stuff we've been talking about, I'm going to put down below in the description box. So just find more information there if you're interested. But until then, we will be praying for you guys and look forward to catching up in May. Bye.